Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jeremy. Just wanted to let you know I woke up this past weekend with a crazy head cold. It kind of knocked me off my game, so there won't be an episode this week. I'm still kind of suffering from this sinus thing. So I did put together a little compilation of some of the more recent movie reviews I've done. These films are still in theaters, so you can still go check them out. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch these reviews, now would be a good time to go ahead and do that. And then next week, we'll be back with episode 12 and we'll get everything rocking and rolling for you. Thanks so much. Again, sorry about this. I just woke up with the head cold this weekend and it really threw me off and really messed up everything for this week's episode. But like I said, we'll be back next week and we'll be good to go. So enjoy these movie reviews and then go ahead and get out to the theater this week and go ahead and check these films out. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great week.
Single mothers already have a lot on their plate when it comes to raising the family by themselves and providing financially for their family on that single income. Now go ahead and add the city of Los Angeles. Now let's add turning 40. Now let's add an emotionally manipulative ex-husband. Now let's counter that with an emotionally supportive and loving mother. And to top it all off, we're gonna go ahead and throw in 3 young, charming gentlemen who are filmmakers from New York. Was Home Again the feel-good comedy that the trailers promised it would be? Or are we gonna need to divorce ourselves away from this film? Let's dive in and take a look in this movie review. So the overall film actually explores the life of Alice, played by Reese Witherspoon, and it explores life through her eyes. So throughout the film, we're kind of getting a picture of what she sees reality should be with the people that are in her life and how it's impacting her. She has 2 small children who are both excellent actors in this film. They really capture what it is to be a kid. I was watching it and I thought, wow, this is stuff my nieces and nephews would say. So kudos to the director and the casting director on finding those kids because they did a great job. Reese Witherspoon always does a great job. Candice Bergen is her mother. I was so happy to see Murphy Brown back. I was like, this is great. And she plays a wonderful role that is supportive, loving, and understanding. And it just really just kind of shows where Reese Witherspoon's character is and where she gets some of her charm. Because in this film, we see that she gets some of her charm from her mother, thanks to Candice Bergen's performance. Also, the 3 young gentlemen from New York who are filmmakers all play just these great separate identities or personalities, if you will, that really kind of add to everything that's going on in the story. And then you have the emotionally manipulative ex-husband who towards the end of the film even admits that he's aware that he has this issue in him and that this is something that he deals with. So the story overall was done really well. We get to explore kind of what turning 40 would be like for a single mother in LA who's, been in the movie and Hollywood scene her entire life. I would say my big critique of this film is it's very thin. We get an understanding of the characters, we get an understanding of what Reese Witherspoon's character is going through as a single mother in LA, but we don't really dig deep into anything. It's just kind of like we understand what's going on and then we're going to kind of move forward with the plot. Now, when I saw this movie, I didn't realize that I saw this movie surrounded by a group of women who all related to this movie in some way, shape, or form, which actually, for me, made the film even better. Because I was sitting in the middle of a chorus of older women agreeing and talking and conversating to the movie while the movie was going on. And typically, I would be like, can we please not talk during the movie? However, in this film, hearing them talk and hearing them go with the, you know he would, I believe that, I can see why she'd do that, it made me go, oh, this was a really well-written piece that resonated with the viewership. Now, clearly, this movie was not necessarily written for a person like myself and is, a white male in his 30s, but I still found a lot of enjoyment in the film. And the fact that while I'm watching this, I have this chorus of women in surround sound just echoing back sentiments that I'm seeing on screen really elevated my enjoyment of the film because I felt like when they sat down and wrote this film, when the director wrote it, because she wrote and directed it. So because Haley Myers-Shire, the writer and director, did such a great job with this film and writing to women in a way that resonates with them as an audience, to literally elicit verbal responses from them, not just emotional, but emotional responses so strong that they feel that they need to agree with or understand verbally what's going on in the film around me as I'm watching it, I've got to give it both high fives. Now this movie, like I said, it is a little thin in its character development, but overall the story is a lot of fun. It reminded me of something like Music and Lyrics. It reminded me of a mix of like The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel with something similar to Crazy Stupid Love. Like those types of character films that are just fun to watch, where you understand what's going on. You don't necessarily really dig into the characters and their mental place and their psyche, if you will, but you understand the characters, where they're coming from, and you can relate to them on some level. And this film did a really good job with that. So again, because I saw it in a room full of women that really connected with the character and connected with the story, both as the single mother and Candice Bergen's character as the supporting mother of her daughter, who is a single mother raising 2 kids in LA, I've got to give it both high fives. So because of that, and because of how much I enjoyed the film, when I walked out of the theater going, wow, everybody in this movie did a great job, and I didn't realize how great of a job they did until the people surrounding me in the theater let me know that this is connecting with an audience, I've got to give it both high fives. So Home Again is in theaters now. Go check it out. High fives. Terrorists attack a beach paradise while everyone is enjoying their holiday. Most of the people on this beach don't survive, but one does. And he decides he's going to go after all of these terrorists by himself in a revenge mission for killing his fiancée. So, does American Assassin live up to the action promised in the trailers, or should we black bag this operation? Let's go ahead and take a look in this review for American Assassin. So the trailer does a really good job of actually delivering what we're going to get in this film. Sometimes you see a trailer and you're like, I feel this was a completely different film. This is not that movie. This movie delivers exactly on the trailer, and it doesn't pull any punches. It lets you know that it knows what it is, and it celebrates that fact. This is, at best, just an enjoyable action flick. The writing in it is kind of choppy. It was one of my biggest complaints with the film, is that the dialogue feels like 2 people talking at each other instead of 2 people talking with each other. And that kind of bugged me. However, the writing itself doesn't distract from the story, and it definitely doesn't distract at all or take away from the action in the film and the reasons for the characters. This film celebrates every trope of action movies. You have the young, hard-headed, arrogant hero. You've got the seasoned veteran who sees this as a potential danger but then eventually comes around. It's just one action trope after another, and if you like action movies, like I like action movies, this is a great film for you to enjoy. Now, this is a fist and knuckles movie. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of punching, there's a lot of kicking, there's a lot of people dying from explosions and gunplay. There's not a lot of CGI. Like, you're not going to see a tsunami come in and give a downtown area a permanent bath, right? You're not going to see like all of these asteroids fall to the earth and just destroy the planet. That's not what this movie is, except at the very end. The very end felt like a weird departure from the entire movie I had just watched, because the whole film felt like something akin to like The Bourne Identity or James Bond, where again, fist and knuckles. We got a lot of punching, we got a lot of martial arts, and we got a lot of gunplay and knife fights. Now the knife fight in this, I would say, is like in the talk for maybe the top 10, but it definitely doesn't beat the knife fights in the Under Siege film, because towards the end of the first Under Siege film, where you're on the boat and they've got the knife fights and they're just like going at it, that was a great knife fight scene. This movie, not so much. They do a lot of what we've talked about before in other reviews, where they kind of play with the camera angle so it looks like there's a lot of action happening. It's definitely not like Birth of the Dragon, where you have like that full panned back so you can see that these people know all of the martial arts that they're doing on screen. This is kind of uptight. This gets really in your face. It's very close. And then they'll pull back a couple of times to show like kicks and stuff like that. But overall, the action in it is really good. But again, the ending gets a little weird. Now, if you saw The Dark Knight Rises like many of us did, and at the end of the film, you're scratching your head going, did he just set a nuclear bomb off over Gotham? You're going to be scratching your head again in this film. Because at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, you have been warned. At the end of the movie, the writing team decided, and with the director's approval, to set off a nuclear bomb underwater. They set off a nuclear bomb underwater. Now, because of that, there's some big waves and there's some big CGI scenes at the very end of the movie. But again, the entire movie, up to maybe that last 5 to 7 minutes, is all fist and knuckles. And then we have like this weird, I don't know why they approved setting off a nuclear bomb. If I had to give a critique on, like, if someone put the script on my desk and said, what do you think we can do better? What's an area of opportunity that you see with the script? I would say you can't set a nuclear bomb off underwater. It doesn't make any sense. However, that's the route they went with it, so that's the end of the movie that we get. And it's just a little weird because, again, it's such a departure from all of the physical action and drama that we get throughout this whole thing. Michael Keaton is great in his role. You know, as the seasoned veteran, the torture scene that he goes through is pretty graphic, so you are going to want to wait for that, because once he does get captured, it gets pretty dark pretty quick for that time that he's on screen, finishing up the second act, going into the third act of the film. So be prepared for that. But otherwise, I had a great time with American Assassin. I walked out of the theater going, that was a lot of fun. I didn't expect to have that much fun. Again, the ending, huh? Why would we set off a nuclear bomb underwater? However, everything else up to that, though, is great. Personally, I feel like this movie is going to do gangbusters once you can rent it or stream it in the privacy of your own home. This is a great on-the-couch Saturday, Sunday afternoon flick where you can just throw it on, pop open whatever drink you prefer on the weekends, and then just go to town on this film, because it is a lot of fun, it's good action, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. It knows what it is, it toes the line for seriousness, but it doesn't go overboard, and for that, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a high five. Suspense, mystery, the FBI, a hunter, and snow. A lot of snow. So let's dive in and take a look at Wind River in this box office review. First of all, going into the theater, I really did not know much about this movie. I had watched the trailer the night before, and what I gathered from the trailer was that it was a murder mystery set in the snow, and Jeremy Renner's character is a hunter, and Elizabeth Olsen is an FBI agent, and Graham Greene is a tribal sheriff. That's really all I knew going into the theater. Now, the overall film is actually a lot darker and more intense than the trailer I saw. The trailer I saw made it look like it's just going to be a murder mystery, when in fact it actually turns out to kind of be like a little bit of a mystery / psychological thriller in a way, but it doesn't really go full board into the psychological thriller aspect of it. We do get to see kind of what happens in the mind with Jeremy Renner's character, since he's a hunter. His character is basically the one who moves the narrative forward in the story. So we actually enjoy the film for what it is through his viewpoint as a hunter. Now, to go along with that, the story at the very beginning, the better part of actually the movie, is very slow. Because again, Jeremy Renner's character is a hunter, so he is very methodical and patient. He's used to tracking predators in the wild to kind of eliminate them and hunt them down so they don't kill off the other wildlife population in Wind River. Now, Wind River is a city that's in Wyoming, and it is part of a Native American community, so it's on a reservation. So that's why the FBI has to get involved, and that's why we have the tribal police with, again, Graham Greene. On the poster, it gives only Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen star credit. I would actually argue that Graham Greene should be on that poster as well as a leading star, because I feel like throughout the film, his character is just as present with as much screen time as the other two. If it's Jeremy Renner, it's Graham there as well. If it's Olsen, it's Graham. So there are a few moments where Graham isn't around and it's just Renner and Olsen, but for the most part, he's right there with them throughout every step of the way up until the ending. So I feel like, in my mind, he should be on that poster as well, but it is what it is. So the film itself is written by Taylor Sheridan. Now, this name might be familiar to you if you saw the film Sicario or Hell or High Water. He wrote those. Now, if you saw Sicario, you know what a brilliant film that was, and also what a very violent film that was. The opening of the movie takes place, and they're basically busting what they think is a drug house, and when they pull down the drywall, they notice that there are bags of dead bodies in the wall. This movie does not pull any punches either. This is very graphic, it's very in your face, and if you get squeamish at all by people hurting other people, you're going to want to stay away from this. If you're the type of person that can watch a TV show like Law & Order Special Victims Unit, and your stomach doesn't get a little when you're watching it, you'll be fine. But if your stomach does get the stay away from this film. This is not the film for you. The majority of the film, like I just previously mentioned, it is very slow. It takes time to get to where the real action takes place and where the drama builds, and it gets very, very intense. And it's all happening on screen because, again, Sheridan does not pull any punches. His view of what life is like in this film is right there on full display for us as movie watchers. And you gotta have a tough stomach to make it through this film because it is very, again, in your face. Spoiler alert. Once John Bernthal's character makes an appearance, do not leave the theater. Do not take a bathroom break. Do not go get a refill of soda or whatever. Stay in your seat because this is where the action really picks up and the movie gets incredibly intense and dramatic. And from there to the very end of the film, this film is sprinting. Everything up to it takes time. It's very slow. The movie is under 2 hours. It feels like a 2.5 hour movie because of how long it takes to get to the ending of the film when all of a sudden, at once, it's just intense action, nonstop, in your face, and then we get the ending of the film. So once John Bernthal's character appears, do not leave the theater because this is what you've been waiting for the entire time. All of that slow buildup, all of that watching Jeremy Renner hunt through the woods and follow tracks and markings is all leading up to this climactic point of the film, and you don't want to miss it. So again, I can't stress this enough. It is very graphic. It is going to make some people squeamish, and if you have any type of history where you're like, I can't watch anything where people get hurt or injured or abused or anything like that, stay away from this. Don't watch this film. I'm telling you right now. But if you can stomach it, if you can get through the tough aggression and violence and everything else that takes place at the ending of this film, then I think you'll enjoy the film for what it is because it's a very well-written piece. It's very well-written characters. All the characters are three-dimensional. None of them feel like they're just added for the sake of being added. The security guards that work with the police and the FBI at the end of the film are there, and they actually create a new level of tension that wasn't there before, and they do a great job adding that tension. So I was very impressed with this film. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would because I didn't know anything going in, but it is a very in-your-face, violent, aggressive, stomach-turning film once we get to the ending. So for me personally, I'm going to give this movie a high five because, again, it's well written, the characters are all done very well, and the story actually makes sense from start to finish from what I saw on screen. But since it's not for everybody and some people might get turned away by the violence and everything else that takes place, I do have to pull one high five back. But I don't think that should stop people from seeing the film if, again, they can watch shows like Law & Order Special Victims Unit. So, Wind River is in theaters right now. You're getting one high five. Check it out. One brother has a limp. The other brother only has one arm. And together, with the help from a friend or two, they plan on robbing NASCAR during NASCAR. So let's take a look and see if Logan Lucky can actually steal its way into my top 10 heist films, or if it's just going to get locked up with the rest of them in this movie review. Now, the movie is directed by Steven Soderbergh, who you may be familiar with because he directed the films like Ocean's 11, 12, and 13. And so he already has a certain flair and style for telling fun, upbeat heist films. Now, when I say upbeat, all you have to do is pull up the scores for these on iTunes and go ahead and just press play on possibly all three if you want. Ocean's 11, 12, and 13. The music in it is always light, and it just keeps the momentum going in the film. Now, if you put this music on, I do want to caution you, you might get a speeding ticket if you're listening to it. So try and avoid driving while listening to it. But definitely if you're at home or at work, you can throw it on and just let it play and you'll be straight for the rest of the day with these tunes. And this film is no exception. He does a really good job with the music in this, and then he also complements it with a score that would be somewhat appropriate for the part of town that this film takes place in. When I say that, it's a lot of John Denver. So if you have a problem with John Denver music, some of the scenes may be a struggle for you because it's John Denver. Also, I should mention that this is a lot of accent work in this film too. You have Americans using a British accent, you have a British guy using an American accent, a little nasally and higher pitched, but still American. And then you also have non-Southerners using Southern accents, and then just Southern accents in general. There is a lot of voice work done in this film. It reminded me of something similar to like the 90s and early 2000s with like Jeff Foxworthy's stand-up. So if you enjoyed Jeff Foxworthy's stand-up and that tone, that voice style does not bother you, then you'll be fine this whole movie. But if you have any reservations about that country twang, you may want to steer clear because that is all over this movie. Now, as far as the heist goes, Soderbergh does a really good job with giving you information that is necessary to keep the plot moving forward, but then holding back some of the important details until the very end of the film when the big reveal is shown as to how the heist was fully completed. Now, his films also have a certain style to them that's like reminiscent of like a 60s-ish type of movie, like the way it looks. And he also does a lot of cuts and edits to help keep, again, the momentum going, because it's all about momentum with his films, because you sit down, the movie starts going, you have a great time, you get to see the big reveal, the movie's over, and you walk out smiling. At least I do. Now, I do want to say this film started off a little slow as we're trying to get to know the characters and get to know this world that they are inhabiting. And I was surprised to find out that the movie is actually almost 2 hours long. It clocks in at about 1 hour and 59 minutes according to IMDb. Now, when I looked back at that, I was surprised again because it did not feel like 2 hours. This movie's momentum just keeps it going. The edits are so clean in this that you don't even really notice. There's the transitions that are happening and it's just moving you along and it's telling you a really fun, entertaining story. Now, all of the characters in it are also equally entertaining. There's an entire scene that takes place in the prison, and what happens there with Game of Thrones, I've actually found quite comical and amusing. There's a little bit towards the end, after everything is kind of said and done, where these police officers or federal investigators get involved, and I feel like you could kind of remove that whole part of the film, as I don't really see how it served the plot or tied anything up. Now, the caveat to that is, if this is going to be a sequel, a movie and then another movie, a sequel to it, then those cops make perfect sense because of the ending where we actually get to see one of the cops is still around. But if there's no sequel, if this is just a one and done, I really didn't understand the point of those cops. Again, you could just kind of remove them and then we'd be okay. There was a little bit towards the end with the writing where he's like, because the brothers always have bad luck, that's what they're known for. But in this movie, their luck actually changes, except at the very end, there's one more little twist. But again, if there's no sequel, I don't understand what the point of that twist was. You're gonna just cut everything out, gone from the heist to that last scene at the bar that his brother owns and works at, and I think we would have been good. Overall, I had a great time. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it because it's just a lighthearted, fun heist movie. I don't see this winning any awards, and to be honest, this film will probably do really well on DVD and VOD when people can just enjoy it in the comfort of their own home. Do I recommend you go out and see it? If you like heist films, or if you're a fan of Steven Soderbergh's visual style and storytelling, you're definitely going to want to see this because this is par for the course as far as his movies are concerned. So I can't give it both high fives, but Logan Lucky's still going to get one high five from me because, as I always say, I had fun at the movies, and isn't that what movie watching is all about? Next up, we have the Hitman's Bodyguard. The idea of an action comedy is appealing, and then you throw in a whole bunch of ammunition and two dynamic on-screen personalities, and you've got something special. Now add to this, to go even further, go ahead and throw it into a couple different countries over in Europe so that the scenery is constantly changing, and now you're promising us something very, very special. How good was this film? Does the Hitman's Bodyguard actually resonate as an action comedy? Or was it just a B-movie flop? Let's find out in this review right now. I was not prepared for this film at all. I walked into the theater thinking I was going to get an action comedy, and what I got was so much more. I was blown away. It took me a little while to actually figure this out as I'm watching the movie because things are happening, action sequences are happening, and I'm just sitting there going, man, this is a lot of action. And this is like one joke after another. But then after a while, I realized the light bulb came on and I was like, oh my goodness, this isn't an action comedy. This is a celebration of action comedies. They took everything to the furthest extreme and then just pushed it a little bit more and then a little bit more. Now you take car chases, motorcycle chases, boat chases, people chasing each other on foot. You've got a fight in a hardware store with nail guns and stuff. Then you also have a rocket launcher, people just fist fighting in the streets, buildings exploding, bombs going off, and people casually walking away, like doing that shot from like the early 2000s, like when the action movies, you'd see a giant explosion and like the guy would light a cigarette and just like walk towards the camera. It's just so much. It's like, what is going on in this movie? It's insanity. It was absolutely fantastic. I loved the craziness in this movie. Then you add someone like Salma Hayek to the mix as well. So you have just these two guys, Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson, who are incredible on-screen personalities. And then they're complemented by Salma Hayek. This movie was so over the top. I was just sitting there just like a little kid at Christmas, just the biggest dumb smile on my face, just laughing the whole time. The soundtrack in it is really good. The music keeps you moving. The jokes are just delivered perfect timing every time. I don't even know if Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds were even acting in this movie, or if they're just two guys reacting off of each other's natural reactions. There was such great on-screen chemistry between both of them, and then the chemistry between Samuel L. Jackson and Salma Hayek was great. And it just unbelievably funny and just nonstop action. Once you think like, how could they top that? They go one step further with the action. Okay, we've got car chases. Okay, but now we have a car chase and a motorcycle. Okay, now we have a car chase and 17 different foreign police officers. Okay, now we got a car chase, 17 foreign police officer cars chasing them. Insert a motorcycle while someone else is driving away on a boat, and everybody has to stay on the edge of the water on the street so they don't fall into the water or run into a shop. It is absolute craziness, and I seriously felt like everybody who worked on this film loved action movies, because it was like every possible type of trope that is in an action movie was in this film. It was excellent. I had such a fun time. I'm not saying this is a good movie. By all means, this is not a great movie, but it's so much fun. And it's such a nice payback to all of the action movies. There was this thing in the 90s on one of the TV stations. I believe it was TNT at the time. And it was this saying where you'd hear the guy come on and go, "Movies for guys who like movies." And what that meant, high adrenaline, high testosterone, pretty girls, and lots of explosions. Simple plot, simple dialogue, but everything else was go, 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 go. This was that, plus some more. Like, it was so much fun. And again, not a great movie if you're going in and you're like, oh, I'm really looking forward to this story. I think this will be a spectacular example, and look at, stop it. It's none of that. This is just in-your-face action. Grab a big old bucket of popcorn, maybe even just bring in some chips. Because there's so much cheesy goodness in this movie, you can make nachos in your seat. It is fantastic fun. I can't wait to see this movie again. The Hitman's Bodyguard is getting all the high fives for me, because I walked out with the biggest dumb smile on my face going, that was such a fun action flick with really well placed jokes for the laughs, and the characters in it were so diverse, but they played off of each other so well. I had such a fun time at the movies. I can't recommend this enough if you love action comedies and you're okay with a lot of cheese. This movie's got cheese for days. I loved it. The Hitman's Bodyguard. Check it out. All the high fives.